Thank you so much for joining me today, Jim and Adam.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. This is a treat. We had Jim on a few months ago. We were answering listeners' most popular microdosing questions. That's the most popular episode, most downloaded episode of all time, Jim. I had not told you that previously, but by kind of a long shot, except for the pilot. That's the most downloaded episode. So thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on back in the day and sharing all of that knowledge with us, and really excited to have you back and talk more about the art of microdosing. We had talked a lot about the specifics last time from the survey, but this time I'm excited to get into this chat with you and Adam about some of the finer aspects. Now, something I'm not sure we got into last time that I'm excited to cover this time is what got you into microdosing. I know you were back when psychedelics were huge in the 60s. There was a lot of the larger doses being consumed. So I'd love to hear your story of what led you to go down the route of microdosing.
As is usual in major scientific discoveries, it's inadvertent and mistakes and misunderstandings, which is a friend of mine, Robert Fort, was telling me that Albert Hoffman had talked to him about very low doses and recommended to him that he might use it for some personal part of his life. And that Albert had actually used low doses and had tried to get Sandoz to research kind of that end of the spectrum, and they had not paid attention. And Albert said had they done so, we might not have needed Ritalin, and we would not have needed Adderall and Provigil and kind of those drugs. So obviously, normal curiosities, my friend, and I ask a little about it, and I learn a little about it. I have zero interest in low doses. I have zero interest in medium doses. I have pretty much all my interests were in super high doses of personal transcendence and loss of ego identity and beyond. So I'm kind of the last person in the room that might be interested, but the universe likes to joke that way. So I started being just normally curious and asking friends, have they ever tried it? No. What is it? Why don't you try it? And I started to get reports, and it started to look like there was an effect. It wasn't clear what it was, but it was generally positive. And the last 10 years have filled in that vagueness.
And so initially you had just been experimenting with microdosing LSD. Was there a period of time where you decided, okay, let's try some other substances?
Well, I've not done that much personal experimentation. See, the nice thing is when you ask the psychedelic community to do something that's safe, they're so excited, and that everyone. I mean, the number of people who basically wrote lengthy reports about their personal microdosing experience was really deeply moving, because I was just some guy and they were just somewhere else in the world, and they used all kinds of substances. In fact, so our sample today, which is a couple of thousand people, maybe 45% LSD, 45% psilocybin, and the rest a scattering of other substances. So most of what we know is what I would call classic psychedelics, which would include peyote and mescaline and mushrooms, psilocybin, and then some of its congeners, ALD, something else, 52, I forget what it is. There's a couple of substances which turn into LSD once they're ingested. So that's the sample. It was, again, people determining that since classic psychedelics have the basic framework that are similar, they probably would work as microdoses similarly as well, and that's what we found.
Got it. I understand. Adam, I'd love to hear what got you into microdosing. If you could tell us a little bit about your journey into the microdosing world.
Absolutely. I spent a little over a decade in the cannabis space out here in California. Was first using cannabis to treat my depression. Began as a farmer and then as a legal manufacturer and distributor. About 2.5 years ago, I began to hear about all the reports from Johns Hopkins. I began watching videos by Dr. Fadiman and Paul Austin, and began to learn about all the positive benefits of microdosing in helping with depression, anxiety, treatment-resistant depression, which I really felt like I struggled from. And I began to self-treat myself and use microdosing to totally overcome more than 39 years of an addiction to misery and depression. It was at that point that I decided I wanted to sell the cannabis companies and move into educating people on microdosing. One of the most important things about the cannabis space and changing people's mind and public opinion was re-educating them on the actual truth and facts of the substance. So I pivoted into this space, got a hold of Dr. Fadiman a little over a year ago. He's become an amazing friend and mentor, and is there for me daily to answer questions and continue to help me learn on this journey. And so just a person that had a personal experience and felt called to share that experience with the world.
Got it. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Jim, I would love to hear how, a lot of people talk about, we discussed this before, that you have a protocol that you have developed, the Fadiman protocol. How did you end up developing that protocol?
Well, the protocol is basically, we know with psychedelics, if you can't take them too often, tolerance develops. We don't quite know what tolerance is, but it means that the drug doesn't have any effect. So given that, I suggested, I kind of was looking at these early reports, and they said, because psilocybin takes 4 to 6 hours of maximum activity. LSD takes 7 to 12. I was getting people said, actually, this is a 2-day effect. And I thought, wow, what is that about? And then I realized in high dose psychedelics, we all talk about an afterglow. Well, with microdosing, the effect and the afterglow seem to be about the same intensity. So there I was with a 2-day effect. But I'm a curious person. I want to find out stuff. So I asked people, would they take it for a month if they were interested, take it on day 1. Day 2, they would have this afterglow or wouldn't, depending. Day 3, I thought they would come down to their baseline. So on day 4, when they took it again, they would notice something. And what I was after was the noticing. And so, and a month was about as much as people who have no connection to you are willing to do. That seemed just sane. And what we found is that the protocol, after around 30 days, a lot of people said, the 3rd day is pretty good too. And so it became more popular as a way of using microdosing, 1 day on, 2 days off. It's now kind of seen as a fundamental method of use. It was actually a research protocol because we tell people at the end of 30 days, you decide what's correct for you. You decide your correct dose, you decide your correct timing. Just know that you have to have days off if you want to have effects. And so that's where we are right now. And there are a couple of other protocols that came up in different ways. And they all seem to be working pretty much the same as far as we can tell.
Is it that they all continue to work as long as there's some washout period? Like you said, we're not exactly sure, what the tolerance is, but it could develop. Is that washout period, that period of abstaining from the drug, an important part of any regimen?
Well, psychedelics actually leave the body fairly quickly. So it's not quite the same as a washout of some psychotherapeutic or not very psychotherapeutic chemical. What we're seeing is the body seems to say, we've had enough of this particular stimulation right now. And all of following within the brain, within the body, and if you pile on another psychedelic, another dose, it's simply the receptors aren't open to it in the same way. So we may find that it's quite different from traditional washout. It's, I think, more like you don't eat your favorite dessert too often. You're capable of eating your favorite dessert every night, but try that for a week and you will not want to eat it for a long, long time. That's not there's not a physiological washout, but there is a shift in the brain of pleasure and inspiration and so forth. So that's what we're looking at. And this seems to be across psychedelics, across cultures. And again, we have lots of people who say, well, I'm going to try it every day. And after a while, they say it didn't work as well. So it seems to be true.
Got it. I understand. Now, Adam, you ended up getting into, after learning from Jim, you ended up getting into coaching people on microdosing. Is this something that you work with people a lot? Is small alterations to their schedule to maximize the efficacy?
Yes, absolutely. The most important thing to get across is that each person is an individual and no one protocol is going to work for everybody. Everybody has different needs. In the same way, no one dosage is going to work for everybody. Where some people might find 150 milligrams of psilocybin is subperceptual for them, it might not be subperceptual for you. So, part of the aspect of coaching is individualizing the protocol to the person, their specific needs, if there are other medications involved, what are their intentions, but it's also helping this person to find the sweet spot and actually find that subperceptual dose. Because as Jim will share, over the years, they've found that the dose is actually lowered and that they're finding that people are getting more benefits when they take less of the substance. So again, as a coach, it's really important that the protocols are individualized, and that we find that sweet spot for the person so that we do keep it subperceptual.
Got it. Got it. That's good to know. And there's a question I'm going to ask both of you, but I'll start with Jim. In all of the people that have corresponded with you, have you noticed any trends of, besides what actual psychedelic they're taking and their schedule? Have you, and I don't know all the data that you collect on this, but have you noticed any kind of other meta trends of things that people have done that have led to greater benefits? Like, have they mentioned, okay, I started microdosing and then I also added meditation, or I started microdosing in the summer versus the winter? Have you noticed anything like that led to seemingly more positive outcomes?
Yeah, and actually, my resource here is a larger group of users, which is the Reddit has a subreddit called Microdosing, and there's 120,000 people on that. And if you've ever looked at Reddit, there's a lot of chat that goes back and forth when someone says something interesting. So someone will ask a question or say, I've been microdosing and I'm able to stop taking my SSRI. And I've only been doing it for a month, and should I take some time off? Might be a question. So then you have 80 responses of people who have worked with that same issue one way or another. And so you get a huge information source of what I call citizen science that you can't get in a laboratory study, because you don't ever want a laboratory study to be so loose as to let in all that kind of extra information. So what we're finding is people generally are saying now, and I'm watching this shift, hey man, microdosing is really cool, but unless you add, and then whatever they're doing, and it's usually a lot of meditation, exercise, therapy, changes in diet, all the normal things people do to improve their lives, they say it works better. And particularly people are saying, not that meditation improves your microdosing, but that microdosing absolutely improves your meditation. So it's now being used much less in the Reddit world, much less medically. We get more requests for somewhat difficult medical conditions, and asking our advice. And because the people who are taking it out of the knowledge that's available on the web, the healthier people, they don't necessarily want to come to us because they're fine. The people who need a little support or need a schedule, they come to us. And the people that Adam works with, see, what's wonderful is we don't have any protocols that are different. We don't even have, our dose range is quite wide. So we're not telling people what to do. We're telling people how to start and how to be safe. Then it then turns to people like Adam and the people in the Netherlands, one of the groups, who say, you're an individual. This substance is working on your entire being. And therefore, you're probably going to want some advice that's obviously specific for you. Someone years ago, one of the very famous vitamin guys, and he said, and was asked, well, what's the best formula, for general use? And he said, any general formula is not for you.
I like that.
And I,
Yeah, I very much appreciate that individualism and its importance. And Adam, I'd love to hear what you've seen in your own, personal coaching practice with the kinds of things, meditation being one of them. Have you noticed that or any other factors has really helped set people up for success?
Absolutely. It's like it improves their life all across the board. Jim tells a great story about getting an email from somebody that says that they started eating healthier. They wanted the salad instead of the greasy food. They were drinking less alcohol, smoking less cannabis. And these are the type of things I see across the board with the clients. They might be coming here for depression, or they might be working to lower their antidepressants. But what they find is they're changing their diet, they're exercising more, they're meditating more. Now, as a coach, these are all things that I'm insisting that they do daily. And that's where, on these days off, where they're still getting the 48-hour effect, or if they're doing the Fadiman protocol and they're on the third sober day, they have all of these practices like breath work and meditation and exercise to still keep them in that happy and positive place. So, more than anything, people improve their lives in ways that they would have not even imagined.
Now, there's something peculiar here, which is, and I want to make it clear because Adam is saying that he suggests people do these things and do them every day. What we found, and what's interesting when you're looking at the effects of a substance or a practice or anything, there's things you know you're looking for. What fascinates you is all the things that happen that you didn't ask for, because it also ends the placebo discussion. And what we started to find is people were saying, well, I took this because I have attention deficit disorder and I wanted to do better in school. But I noticed at the end of a month, I was smoking less pot. I was drinking less alcohol. I was having less coffee. My sleep pattern had changed. And I tried out for the track team. Okay, now and that would be fairly common, that there would be these basic lifestyle changes inadvertently and without paying attention. Number of people who stopped smoking, usually purposely, what they said is it was remarkable after a few rounds of microdosing that the issue of smoking began to diminish. See, if you've ever tried to quit something you're seriously attracted to, like smoking, which is really hard, your body says, oh, please, 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 come on, just a little bit. One puff isn't going to hurt you, and it would really help me. And what shifts with microdosing is smoking. Why would people smoke?
Yeah, the urge is gone. It sounds like less of, it was interesting because my question was, are there things that are people doing that help them? And it seems like kind of the reverse is what's happened is they get in the mindset of wanting to microdose. And like I think Jim, you and I had discussed the last time we got together on the podcast, is that when you feel better, which microdosing seems to make you overall feel better, then it is easier to keep to a meditation routine or an exercise routine or give you the inspiration to go out for the track team.
And also, if you're feeling, basically, also if you like yourself, you're more likely to do things that help you. Just as if you are in a terribly negative space, full of negative self-talk and depression, your life doesn't work well because that's kind of how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when people come out of depression, they may make major life shifts because that's what a healthy, non-depressed person does.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Adam, I'd love to know when people come to you, what are some of the most common questions about microdosing that they have?
Most common questions are, can I do this with the current medication that I'm on? Can I still be a parent to my children? Can I drive a vehicle? Can I function at work? And then they want to know every little detail about how this can help them. Most people that are coming to me or seeking me out have tried everything else. They've tried a whole handful of antidepressants. They've tried all kinds of treatment. So they're willing to try something new, and they have a lot of great questions. But more often than not, people are dealing with addictions, and we're finding that the microdosing of psilocybin specifically works really well as an addiction disruptor. I've had a lot of success with clients with alcohol addiction, with Percocet, and with antidepressants. So more than anything, people are coming with really educated questions. They can find a lot of great information with Dr. Fadiman's videos on YouTube and his books as well. But they're coming just with really great questions. They want details on how they can safely, effectively do this in their life.
Now, one of the questions that people almost always ask is, can I either take this with my current medications, or can I take this to get rid of my current medications? Now, on our website, uh, research psychedelics, sorry,
Microdosingpsychedelics.com.
microdosingpsychedelics.com, because we're changing the website, there is a question of drug interaction. And again, these are people's reports from all over the world. And we have 185 items on that of substances that people report did not interfere with microdosing, or that they were able to get off of with the help of microdosing. Not by, again, not by stopping, but by tapering. So it is the most common question. I was thinking at some point, gee, in the 60s, when we were giving people 400 micrograms of LSD, I don't know that we even asked that. I realized all those medications didn't exist. So the idea that we've become such a medicated people is really quite culturally new.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thank you for sharing that website, because I am 100% certain that is also the most common question that you would get, because that's the most common question I get sent to the Instagram account or to the website that I run, plantmedicine.org. And so actually, Jim, last time you and I chatted, your episode came out, and then the episode the week following was antidepressants and psychedelics. And we had Ben Malcolm, the pharmacist, come on and talk about every class of psychedelics and how it interacted with antidepressants in different categories. So,
oh, yeah. Again, high doses, there's some very serious interaction problems. And people know that before ayahuasca, there's even, you got to be more worry about interaction problems. The thing about microdosing is, and this is really fundamental, they have no of the classic psychedelic effects, including you can take a lot of the medications you're on without disturbing your physical system than is true for higher doses.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I see why that would be an easier, like you said, partner with tapering for those who are interested in trying that. Since Jim and I last talked, we had talked mostly about the survey that you had done with. Did you say how many thousands of people had responded?
Well, we have good data on maybe 1,700. We have partial data on up to 3,000, and that's from one of our bits of data is it's from 51 countries. So that people are able to obtain psychedelics at a microdose level all over the world without seeming to be too upset. It didn't seem to be too difficult. Something we don't on our site. We also say, don't ask us where to find anything, because we don't do that.
Yes, smart. Well, I would love to discuss these two other studies that you and I have been discussing a little bit before we went on air, because at least the first one, it so closely mirrored the reports that you had found from the survey. And this was a study that came out in October of this year in the journal called European Neuropsychopharmacology. And it was talking about low dose LSD at like 5, 10, and 20 micrograms. And it was showing that it enhanced sustained attention and reduced speed of information processing and those both sound like the Silicon Valley reasons that people take it, right? Better attention and focus, and then, you can process faster. And then also, like you had discussed, that it affects mood in an overall positive direction. And the only slightly, let's say, not so positive finding was that they found, like your survey had, that these microdoses could lead to increased anxiety and confusion. So does that basically sound like what your 1,700 reports had come up with?
Yeah, it's nice that almost all the research reports have come out and say, gee, it's actually the way people have told us it was. I don't want to deprecate my scientific buddies, but hey, when you ask the right questions, which is what good research is, you have what's called a hypothesis, which is I want the experiment to come out so it looks like this. So this is a group that is basically asking individuals who are already microdosing. Why are they microdosing? Obviously, they think that there's some benefit. They're not forced to microdose. It's not a pharmaceutical study. They are self-selected people who stay microdosing because it's beneficial. So, surprise, it's beneficial. Okay? The parallel study, which I will not run, is people who eat very little meat but still like bacon. Okay? And if you say, well, why do you still like bacon? They say, because it tastes good, you silly researcher. So that's a very clean study. And it says, yeah, you're up mood, up cognitive abilities. And yes, the issue of anxiety is one you have to look out for. So our recommendation, literally on our site, is if recommendation is your symptom, don't microdose.
If anxiety is your symptom?
Yeah. If depression is your symptom, and most people with a depression have anxiety correctly because their life isn't working well, uh, microdosing seems to be microdosing seems to be as effective as the results from the high dose depression studies. Now, this is something that the psychedelic community has not yet started to look at, of comparing the effectiveness of a microdose taken at home every couple of days, total cost for a month, $20, $30, versus a laboratory uh, guided experiment and session with pre-sessions and post-sessions and two staff during the day, total cost, and I've seen some of the research proposals, like $4,000 to $9,000. And so that's an issue that has not yet been brought up, and I only want to bring it up here to be a troublemaker.
I think you could bring it up both to be a troublemaker and to give somebody a really good research idea, because why not? Like that, I mean, as these become, once psilocybin is, let's say, FDA approved, then that opens the door wide up for that kind of study to take a look at things. I mean, now that these studies are becoming more common, absolutely, I think that's a fantastic area to go down, because I think it's so much more accessible, not only cost wise, but for those who may be more afraid of doing a mega dose of some sort, this is a lot more accessible.
Well, people say, well, should I do a dose or a microdose? I say, these aren't the same. Just because they're the same substance, it's not an either or. It's really, should I have a steak or should I go to France? Okay. Microdosing would be widely available, and there would be a dozen companies fighting for market share if it hadn't happened to be a very small amount of a substance which, in a high dose, scared people.
Got it. Yes, that makes sense. Well, I would love to bring up this one more study, and before I've got some questions for Adam, but you had brought up a study that I wanted to illustrate, in which they found that microdosing LSD had pain-killing effects. Can you talk a little bit about that study?
Yeah, it's a lovely study, and it's a kind of classic, easy to measure pain study where you have your subjects, and they put their hands in ice water, really, really ice water, and you simply measure when they say, "I can't stand it anymore," and they take their hands out. So you got one measurement. So that's and that science likes that. Okay. You then have a different substance, and you do it again, and you can therefore measure between substances, either with the same subjects, which is not done in this case, or just it's a generally out there in the research world that does these studies. And what they found is that microdosing allowed people to basically withstand pain 20% more, meaning more time, than without the microdose. You can do this by giving the microdose or not giving them a microdose. Now, that's cool. And I looked at that and I thought that's kind of interesting. And then the study said that is similar to the range of results, same kind of study, only instead of a microdose of a psychedelic, which is incredibly safe, it's with opiates. Now, opiates are what you go to for pain reduction. So here is a study that says, well, if you'd like something at the same effectiveness level at opiates, maybe microdoses would be the way. So it's a fascinating study. And again, as you're saying, it opens up a research possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. If that could be life-saving to so many people, if we could have a safer version of pain-killing than opioids. So thank you for highlighting that study. Adam, I'd love to hear from you some of the things that I know that you have a course coming out soon with Dr. Fadiman and the Psychedelic Society of San Francisco and the Microdosing Institute. I believe I've covered everybody that's involved. Yes? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And I was looking through the things that it offered, and some of them struck me as interesting adjuncts to microdosing treatment. And one of those was community. And so I think and as Jim was talking about on Reddit, and I've seen the second I put a microdose post on my Instagram on plantmedicine.org, there's a million comments of people wanting to talk about their experiences. Can you talk a little bit about the effects that forming those communities can have on the user?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Community is absolutely key in psychedelics and in healing. And what we're trying to do with this 6-week course, the microdosing movement, is we're trying to create a community where people can come not only to learn about microdosing from the world's top educators, but also to share their experience, right? We can also learn from these people in the same way that Dr. Fadiman learned from the gentleman in Africa that treated his shingles, and now he can help people with shingles. We can learn something every day from these people. So we're looking to create a safe container and a community where people can talk openly and safely about microdosing, and also where we can educate those that are new to the whole idea. I know as far as coaching goes, a lot of people might think they don't need a coach. They've taken large dose journeys. That might be the case for those people that are struggling with serious issues like addiction, maybe some trauma. It helps to plug them into a community. It means so much to my clients that I'm checking in on them, that they're supposed to journal, that I'm holding them accountable. And I think for people that get into addiction and are traumatized, it's that lack of feeling connected to people. So I think community is the most important thing about this psychedelic space. It's the most important thing about microdosing, and it's really what we're hoping to do with this 6-week course through the Psychedelic Society, is create a community where people can learn more about the positive effects of microdosing.
Yeah, and you mentioned accountability, and I noticed that was something else that was a feature of the course, is that you set up accountability buddies, I believe it was called.
Yep.
And what's that like? Do they check in on each other? And like where you said, if you're coaching somebody one-on-one, you're doing that check-in. Is this a system where the participants in the course are getting to check in with each other?
Yes, it's an interpersonal check-in so that we make sure no matter how many hundreds of people sign up, that we're not going to miss anybody through the cracks. They also have a community every week where everybody gets to show up and have a group discussion. So this is a place where people can share with the larger whole. And then we wanted to have the accountability buddies so everybody could have an interpersonal connection with one person. What we hope is that when people leave this course, this is a lifelong family and community. They'll have access to all the videos, all the chats, all the information for the rest of their lifetime. So we're just really hoping to build this community and help people connect to other people that are interested in the same sort of thing. So yeah, the accountability buddy is about making sure everybody is held accountable and is heard.
I love that. I think there's so many parts of that, both what Dr. Fadman was saying with meditation and the other adjuncts, and like you described with breath work and these community aspects, which it's like even if you didn't have a psychedelic substance, these things would improve your life regardless. Everybody could benefit from more community. Everybody could benefit from somebody checking in and showing them they care on a regular basis, and from meditation, all these things. And then, like Jim says, this just makes everything a little bit better. And so it's going to even make that community you formed feel better even than it would at the end of the day just from having that community. So I think it's something that we can all learn from, your experience, like in this course. What you found that will help these users are things that could help us all in everyday life, whether or not we're, I think everybody's goal at the end of the day is to not feel they need to take anything. And so these medicines can help get us there, but it's great to see the things that you can put in place to achieve that and make it a lasting change.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've seen with Adam's group, when we were talking about it yesterday, is people who are working on serious issues, what they find is they end up using microdosing less and less and less. And that is not true, shall we say, of other medications. But it's obviously the goal of the person to make their life work, not to be able to suppress symptoms forever. And so we're really talking about the best of the medical model, which is called remission and cure, rather than a lot of the medical model, which is called, I don't know what to do to help you, but I can squash down either your physiological or your mental reactions to what's going wrong in your body. So we're really seeing a different model start to appear. And again, my work would never show that particularly because we're only asking people to check in and how are they doing with microdosing. The next step, and of course we know it's true, is when something good happens to you, you want to tell people about it, and you want to talk to your friends about it. It's called, there's another term for this called marketing, okay, or branding. But what we're really saying is um, people forget that there's a term, it's a word called gospel, the gospels, that translates as it's good news. So these were guys in a 2,000 years ago kind of standing on the street corner saying, hey, good news, buddy. I want to share it with you. And so literally establishing community, and in a funny way, it's a lot easier to do it in the Zoom world because people literally, I recall, we have, we have, there was one person we were working with who was living 100 miles above Yellowknife. Now, Yellowknife is the highest community in Canada. And how can you live 100 miles more north of that? Well, there are certain kinds of hunting lodges which very wealthy people fly in and then go out and kill things and then fly home. But somebody has to run those little lodges. And so she was there, about as isolated as anyone I've ever heard of, who wasn't, a professional monk. But having a community to communicate with made a huge difference. So yes, yay for community. It's really upping every other part of the microdose experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing that. And you're absolutely right. Zoom can bring, and it also can overcome my laziness because it's like freezing outside today, but I'm here with you two gentlemen in the warm over Skype. Getting out in my car would have been less fun. So this is awesome. And yes, I appreciate you bringing that up, that one of these silver linings is that we've gotten more used to this virtual thing. And so now these people are more easy. It's easier for people to form a community in ways that we hadn't necessarily thought of before. Like I love your community idea. We're stressing this because it's spelled community EA, like you're in front of your Zoom camera having tea. But Adam, I would love to hear in your coaching, because we talked a little bit about this with Jim last time about the results of the survey, but what have you seen as far as people that, they come to you with certain, we talk about the medicalization. So yes, they come to you with probably certain conditions, diagnoses that they've been given by their physicians. What conditions have you seen microdosing have the biggest impact on?
Honestly, addiction and depression and anxiety. And all of those usually are linked together. Usually there's some depression and anxiety that is linked to the addiction. We talked a little bit earlier about how if some people have anxiety, microdosing might not be helpful for them. What I'm finding is that if a client has an anxious experience with microdosing, it usually means they've taken too large of a dose. And if you actually can find the sweet spot for a person, anxiety is something that can be greatly helped. My own 72-year-old mother is one of my clients and somebody that microdoses. And the first thing she commented on the first day was how for the first time in 72 years, she didn't feel crippling anxiety. So I want everybody out there to understand that this helps people with anxiety, but it's about really getting it in that sub-threshold right dose. The other thing is depression and mood. People are going from this existence of always in the default mode network, always thinking negatively, thinking about the past, to living in the moment, to beginning to rewrite their stories, beginning to look at their trauma differently, beginning to look at their past differently. So, what I'm seeing is a total transformation of people, whether they come for help with medications or weaning off of medications, or they're just looking to do better in athletics. I also work with a few professional hockey players that are using microdosing as performance enhancement on the ice. And what are these hockey players finding out? That it's also a performance enhancement at home, in their relationships, with their wives, with their friends. So we're just seeing extremely positive results across the board. And we're seeing that the longer people microdose, the less often they need to microdose. Now, I've been microdosing for more than 2 weeks. And what I find is sometimes I go through the week and it's multiple days before I realize I haven't microdosed. And that's what seems to happen with these clients is they start to rewrite the story in their mind. They start to get joy back in their life. They've added exercise, a better diet, breath work, and they're doing positive things. And they find that they can live their life with maybe only microdosing once a week or a few times a week. But we've actually seen really amazing reports. One woman who has diabetes, she takes a microdose supplement once a week, and it's lowered her sugar levels incredibly low, so that she's using way less insulin. And then we've also seen a father who is using it for a child with Asperger or autism, excuse me, and it's really helped the child to become more social and become come out of its shell. And this is all documented by the child's teacher and the therapist and all kinds of people. So there are so many amazing applications across the board. Again, what I find is it's the exact opposite of the Western medical model, where the longer the people are microdosing, the less they're actually needing and using the substance.
Now, Adam, two things. One is you said 2 weeks, you meant 2 years, but
2 years, sorry.
But also, when you say addiction, as I understand it, a number of your people had become addicted to painkillers through an injury and through conventional medical intervention. Is that right?
Absolutely. We have a few different people with the ability to kick the painkiller habit. One specific individual with Percocet as well. And, microdosing is helping people to identify with their pain differently. Dr. Fadiman, we talked about people with Lyme disease. It's helping people with Lyme disease. Now, it's not taking away their Lyme disease. It's not taking away all the symptoms, but a lot of the time it's lessening the symptoms and it's changing the way they're relating to the depression that comes with the diagnosis. So again, there's so many different applications for this with so many different conditions. And each day I get new emails or new contacts from people that are using it for totally new things.
Well, Adam, I'm so glad that you brought up diabetes and Lyme disease, because it gives me just a great segue into the fact that doctors, physicians that are treating these should know about these effects that microdoses are having. And yes, microdosing is in its major infancy as far as the rigorous studies, as we've discussed. We've got more from Dr. Fadiman and Reddit than we have on the official study side. But as this is coming out, it's great to look at these different areas that aren't just kind of the traditional, all right, we expected it would help with depression or more of the mental health issues. But like you said, there are some physical issues, some physical ailments or conditions that it may be helpful for as well. So this leads right into what Dr. Fadiman had made me promise we would talk about, which is which I love. Dr. Fadiman, Jim, you're just one of my favorite people. But he said, okay, can we please talk about the Psychedelic Medicine Association? And I didn't pay him to say that at all. But he said, we have to talk about how people can sign up for that. He said he wanted to sign up. He is going to sign up for this, which I'm very honored to have you with us, Jim. But let's, you and I were talking a little bit before the podcast about how this was kind of a missing piece. So if you could just share a little bit of your thoughts on this piece of the puzzle, which is getting physicians up to speed on what's going on in the psychedelic world.
Well, it's a combination of what Adam talks about as community, and the other side of it is physicians, when you kind of take them into the dark side of the room and say, this whole class of medications, how well do they really work? And then there's this sad, quiet moment when they acknowledge that certain classes of medication don't work very well, but it's all they have. And so what I know of all of my physician friends, and probably some of my physician enemies for all I know, they all want to do the best possible job, with the least discomfort for the patient, the lowest cost. Yes, there's an economic problem in the United States around medicine, but physicians didn't go into it very, very rarely, to make money. They could have gone to, been a hedge fund manager and relaxed. So it's hard for them, however, to do something that isn't called community practice. That if you're doing something and the rest of the medical community around you isn't, it's hard. The insurance companies don't want to cover it, and your local medical association doesn't support you. So the information has to be out in the culture so that the clients, the patients, are coming in and saying, hey, I've been reading up on the people with Lyme and microdosing, and it seems to help. and I have Lyme and you're a Lyme doctor. Can we work out something where you can help me with microdosing? That's how I think the medical profession needs to be educated, because it wants to be, even though it may not know that yet. And so the idea that when you told me that there's going to be a psychedelic medical association, I flashed back to Norm Shealy 30 years ago, maybe, who put up the Holistic Medical Association, because the American Medical Association at that point didn't have, for instance, training in nutrition. They really didn't know how to use dietary shifts for a lot of physical conditions. They certainly still are freaking out about homeopathy, for example, and homeopathy either works or it doesn't. The nice thing is if it doesn't, there's no side effects. So it's in the kind of microdose world. So what we're seeing is you're putting out the call that says you don't have to be knowledgeable. All you have to do is be willing to learn what you're reading about, in the Wall Street Journal, in Forbes, in the Economist. I mean, psychedelic research is reported way beyond where it should be if it were only another drug action for another condition. Was that? And if that sounded like an info commercial, I haven't joined yet, so maybe it isn't as wonderful as it will be, but it's pretty wonderful so far.
It will be even more wonderful once Jim joins. There's no question about it, because we have forums in there. We have a community forum and we have clinician forums. And so, like, where else in the world might you get to just randomly? I mean, except for Jim, who will give out his email at the end of this like he always does, and you can talk to him much more easily than probably anybody else. But we've got a lot of, big name players that come and have, in our forums. We have a Reddit style forum that we're developing. Currently, it looks less like Reddit, but it's still there. And it's going to be fostering those same conversations, because like Jim said, when you've got people there and you get a good hot topic, you're going to have 80 responses, and that's where people are learning from. And so that's what we wanted to foster. We wanted to have a clinician say, hey, I've seen, I wanted somebody to say, hey, I have a patient with Lyme and they came in, they said microdosing helped. Anybody else have this? And other doctors to be like, whoa, I treat Lyme. Now my ears are perked up for this. And then others who might have said, hey, I actually had a patient with Lyme who did use microdosing and it helped. And that's the kind of conversations that we're fostering there. Like you said, to speed along that delivery of information, because it'll take a while before it gets to the medical school curriculum. It's going to take a while before research gets out there. So this is essentially just kind of another form of citizen science getting into a community so that we can push the actual science further, faster.
Yeah, and actually, there's a nice parallel, which is which Adam just worked with the committee in Denver, looking at decriminalization results and what do we need to do. And one of the things that they're doing, and this is one of the other groups in that milieu of people helping, is developing education for first responders. So when someone shows up and the person comes out and he says, "I'm God," and the policeman has a gun, and the person who's God sees flowers. And he says, "Oh, God, you brought me flowers," and walks towards the policeman. The policeman knows what to do, which is to help the person relax. And we know that in general, policing shouldn't be mental health work, needs to have mental health workers for mental health problems. Psychedelics are not a mental health problem. They are, however, there isn't anything that people aren't capable of misusing and who won't misuse. So these are the kinds of educational breakthroughs. And certainly the medical profession, I think it's called iatrogenic conditions, and it's like the third or fourth cause of death in the United States. It means physician generated. It means hospital mistakes, doctor mistakes, pharmaceutical mistakes, and so forth. And so education is fundamental. And if we have a substance that is safer, let's say it's not any better than what you're using, but it's safer, it's better. And that's what we're looking at. And I think that's what physicians are going to get excited about. Certainly the physicians that I've met who say, and I'm thinking of a couple of people that said, I went to a talk and this person gave such incredible results about such and such that I started to get interested. Okay. By the time they write me, it's a very different kind of question they're asking.
Absolutely, I imagine. And I appreciate you sharing that your physician friends have, it's kind of a barrier for me to jump just within the psychedelic community is there's a lot of a little bit of the us versus them thinking because there's an old school thought that physicians are paid more for prescribing antidepressants. That is not the case. That is actually against the law. I mean, so much so that I hear it so often that I put a thing on Facebook the other day. Has any of my doctor friends, I have 400 plus doctor Facebook contacts, have any of you heard of a scheme where you're paid for giving out antidepressants? And the answer was zero had heard of this. Like if you were given a prescription, you take it to the pharmacy, the doctor's not getting kickback for that. What it is what you said is that for so long, that's all we've thought we had. And doctors don't know that these things are out there. Like right now, ketamine is basically the only thing out there. But that's a great place to start to realize, oh, if ketamine's out there and that has got some psychedelic properties, maybe you could then, now once MDMA and psilocybin come out and are FDA approved, their minds are already open to that possibility so that we can no longer tell doctors, hey, the only tools you have to combat the depression of the patients that's coming in is therapy and antidepressants, both of which we know don't necessarily work that great a lot of the time. They may, like you said, kind of do the Band-Aid effect, treat some of the symptoms, but they're really not getting at the root cause. Here we now have something that's more efficacious, more likely to get to that root cause. Doctors are going to be very excited about that prospect. And so that's what we're going to bring to them, that knowledge in the Psychedelic Medicine Association.
All right.
Okay, well, before we go, I would love to hear, Adam, just tell us a little bit, because I'm sure people are going to be interested in checking out your course. So can you tell us, I know Jim is one of the guest lecturers, so can you tell us the name and some of the details and how they can find out more besides the show notes? It will be links in the show notes.
Absolutely. It's the Microdosing Movement. It's a 6-week course hosted by the San Francisco Psychedelic Society, the Microdosing Institute, Flow State Micro. We're very excited to have Jim on week 3. That's December 27th. Jim will be coming on to do his infamous question and answer and to talk about how he came up with the protocols. First week, we're going to dive into just the basic information, really get everybody entered as a part of a community. And the rest of the weeks, you can see on the San Francisco Psychedelic Society Instagram page, we go into detail about all the other things that we're going to go into. I'm really excited about the course. I just want to talk really quickly about what happened this morning with the Denver Psilocybin Review Board. It was absolutely magnificent. I had the opportunity to present 20 minutes on microdosing to a board that was made up of the mayor of Denver, the chief of police, a city council member, and a very conservative district attorney. Now, here's what's amazing. At the end of it, I had the district attorney talk about how impressed she was with microdosing and how she would love to hear more about that. I had the chief of police speak up at the end and talk about how he was fascinating to hear about microdosing and how this was the first time he had ever heard about the ability to take these small substances. And I also had the city council member very interested and excited about this possibility. So things are happening fast, and I'm very excited about this 6-week course and very excited to continue to educate people on the benefits of microdosing.
How do you sign up for this course?
You can go to San Francisco Psychedelic Society, and there are links there that will take care of that for you. Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
I will also put links in my story on Instagram. We'll put links in the show notes. We'll put links in my Facebook ad. There will be links galore to this course. Jim, any last thoughts and where people can find you and your book? Just tell us about it again, because it's great.
They can find me from 6 to 8 feet away. Or on Zoom. This new book, I just want to say a moment about it, which is Your Symphony of Selves. It's actually important for integration. It's a fundamental book for integration because you are integrating parts of yourself in a way that you haven't been able to before. So while the book doesn't talk about psychedelics, it is probably going to be as foundational for integration as my other book, Psychedelic Research Explorer's Guide, has been for having safe high-dose sessions. So, and my email, which will be in all those notes, is jfadiman@gmail, assuming my new computer works correctly, and let's assume that's true. So, and don't ask me where to buy anything, okay?
What we've learned: do not ask Jim where to buy drugs, but lots of other questions. Thank you. I appreciate both of you very much for coming on and for all the work that you do. I appreciate, Jim, you doing an infomercial for the Psychedelic Medicine Association. You, you two have made this very delightful. I hope the course goes magnificently. And I just want to thank you again both for your time.
Thank you, Lynn Marie. Thank you, Dr. Fadiman.
Thank you both. I mean, I'm really excited. I'm looking at this screen, and here's the Psychedelic Medicine Society, the breakthrough that we've been looking at for one group of the culture. Here's this 6-week course, which will then be, reproducible. So we're talking about basic training that hasn't been there's a lot of little courses out there, but this is the most sophisticated, complete look at the whole picture that we've yet had. So I'm just sitting here being admiring of you both and feeling that little bit of relief of that you guys are carrying on in what needs to be done in ways that we weren't ever able to do. So welcome to the world create.
Thank you so much, Jim. Really appreciate it. Oh, I just smacked the microphone. Sorry, everybody out there. Really appreciate that. And for everybody else out there, until next time.